Hello everyone, I'm Chris Mozillo Scrupleston, and today I'm going to be reviewing Professor Layton vs Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. An odd crossover between two great heroes on the handheld market, Professor Layton and also Phoenix Wright, the Ace Attorney. I've never played a Professor Layton game, so, you know, I was sort of going in a bit blind. I've only played Apollo Justice on the DS in terms of Phoenix Wright games, but I mean, I kind of love that. So, you know, that's how I was going in. The game ends up using a mixture between the two mechanics of each game, such as you've got the you've got Professor Layton aspects, which are more so to do with going around investigating crime scenes and the like, and that's where you'll mostly do all your collecting of evidence, but also that's also how you that's where you'll be solving puzzles here and there, and you know, just puzzles all the time. And then you've got the Phoenix Wright aspects of the game, which are, well, of course, the court bits, which are fucking amazing. In which, this time, as we're set in a marvellous world, we take in a fantasy setting. There are witch trials, as people are on trial for being a witch and gonna get burned alive. It's grim. Story-wise, one day a mysterious girl turns up at Professor Layton's house as he's hanging out with a little boy named Luke, and she asks for his help, and claiming to be from a mysterious land known as Labyrinthia. Witches come and attack and try and re-kidnap a speller, that's right, re-kidnap. But after a bit of finagling and a puzzle or two, they manage to escape, but only for the speller to kind of be separated from Professor Layton and Luke, and for Luke and Professor Layton to wind up inside a book called Labyrinthia. Cut to Phoenix Wright, who is travelling to London as a sort of attorney exchange program from America, and after doing a quick court case that involved defending one speller Cantabella from the crimes of robbery and murder, attempted murder, assault at least, it turns out that she's innocent for that much. And then Phoenix Wright and also Maya also end up in the book called Labyrinthia. It seems to be happening a lot. So once they're in Labyrinthia, which is a weird and magical world where magic and witches exist and everyone's a knight or using a sword, or everyone's suffering from some heavy nominative determinism. Seriously, like the bard is called Bardley. In this mysterious town, the storyteller's word is law, and the storyteller writes his words in the form of a story, which determines what will happen in the future of the town. Everyone is a bit fearful, of course, because when Layton turns up, turns out someone's apparently going to die in a fire in the forest. So that's, you know, a bit shit. And lo and behold, it would turn out that the main suspect of this fiery inferno it causes a speller, which, you know, it's just, that's kind of how it happens over and over again. The speller's a big suspect of a lot of things. It's quite good. It was like, you know, when you first go into that courtroom, you get this horrifying animated scene where someone's being burned alive to death. You know, you kind of walk in, you're like, ha ha ha, cartoons, that guy's got a big beard and he's called Target. Ha 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 ha! Oh my god, someone's on fire and is dying to death. It's quite brutal in that aspect. That sort of like opening scene into the courtroom segment is incredible because you get this, like, it's no longer just a casual court scene romp where someone might go to jail. Someone's gonna die by the flame, and it's, you know, you get a great sense of like, I've got to do my defending duties because someone might die. The court aspects are more or less the same as every other Phoenix Wright game, where you get evidence, you can inspect the evidence for just, you know, look at it and, you know, have a really good hard look at it. And then obviously you can like present evidence, press witnesses, go, objection! Objection! Like that. I mean, like, the newest thing, of course, is the fact that you have mob witnesses. Where, mob interrogations, where like 5 people will all give their testimony all at once. Which can be a little bit hectic, because you've got to kind of pay attention and see if they're going to react to one of the other statements. And then eventually there might be a point where they say 2 separate things and you've got to point that out, but only when the game tells you can do it. And then obviously there are puzzles. Puzzles fucking everywhere. About 80 puzzles, if I've worked out it correctly. 86, I think, to be exact. Anyway, yeah, there are a lot of puzzles. And having never played a Professor Layton game, I was a little annoyed by the number of puzzles. I'm fine when there's like, oh, here's a lock and it's kind of a puzzle combination. I'm like, okay, you know, numerical puzzle, like cylinders, you know, I'm fine. But when you talk to fucking everyone in town, they're like, oh no, what was me? And there's this like 5-minute exchange between them, and it's all just leading up to like, here's a puzzle! You get nothing gained from it, it's just here's a little puzzle on the side, keep on the down low. Like, every time they got to a point where I was like, ooh, what's this? And then suddenly Luke and the Professor were like, oh, God blimey, Governor, it looks like there's a puzzle here! And then, you know, Layton will be like, oh, it's a good thing I do puzzles for a living, because otherwise we'd be quite stumped by this puzzle. And then Luke's sort of like, yeah, it's a good thing you do puzzles, because otherwise we'd be stumped if you couldn't do this puzzle. And then it's just like, and then Layton's all like, yes, I might as well do this puzzle, might I? I'm like, yes, you should do this puzzle, Professor. Like, oh yes, I'll get right on to the puzzle. It's just, you know, like, hurry up and just give me the fucking puzzle about, like, birds in hats. Some of the puzzles are quite interesting and, you know, sort of fun to do. Others are poorly explained, such as one really early on, where you're trying to untie someone, which is now a puzzle, in which, like, where the knot is, it like, sort of blacks it out, and what you're meant to do is pick out of one or 2 options how the knot would be for the ropes to not be tied, but it wasn't clear at all, because I worked out, like, well, if the ropes are going to be tied, it has to be, you know, this way around, which is wrong, apparently, because we want it so the ropes aren't tied, you know, so people just, like, lay some rope over each other, and you're like, yeah, that's restraining the girl. There's no way she's getting out of this loose, unbound rope. And I was just like, that's not solving anything. That's not untying someone. That's altering, like, reality in the sort of Schrodinger's box rope tying aspect. Where in this one time that Professor Layton looks at the rope, it's just unbound, and Isabelle's like, I'm free. I was bound, but not anymore. As I say, there are some puzzles which are great, and others which are shit. And they just get a bit in the way. There's just too much talk about puzzles. When they fucking, like, it's just so dumb when you go to a crime scene as Professor Layton, and they're like, oh, how do I know you're Professor Layton? Here's a puzzle! Only Professor Layton could do this puzzle. I'm like, ID? Do we not accept, like, legal ID anymore? Do I have to just solve puzzles? Is that my ID? Come on now. Generally speaking, Professor Layton was my least favoured character in the entire fucking game. Why? Because even in the courtroom scenes, he seemingly knew everything. There was never a point where he was caught off guard, or like, we got a piece of evidence, and then he worked it out. Instead, he's just always like, I think maybe you should question that person about this, and then we might get a bit of evidence, so you can question that person about that. And like, look, just fucking tell us what you've come up with. You're on my side, Professor Layton. Stop just staring there with your dark, beady, lifeless eyes. Seriously. I mean, like, even at the very end, there's this, like, you know, in the big climactic story courtroom case, he waltzes in, you know, having basically solved the entire thing, and you start to go about 2 hours of grasping at straws and Professor Layton going like, now I'm going to ask this person about this. See if you can work anything out from here, Wright. By the way, you may want to ask on this one, and maybe here's a bit of evidence you want to write that down. Oh yeah, and then afterwards we're going to witness this witness, and you want this, this, and this. Maybe one day you'll be able to work it all out. I'm like, just fucking tell me, Layton. when you're one of the main characters in the story, just fucking tell me. Don't try and make me work out the stuff you've already worked out off screen with evidence which we've not been given. He's just annoying. However, it was still a really, really fun game, just because, you know, like, I like Phoenix Wright stuff. Like, every time we got to the court segments, I was like, fucking on that. The puzzles weren't too bad, because eventually, you know, like, you just kind of start skipping all the side puzzles, because I don't know what the fuck about dogs. Like, when I was going in, I was like, yeah, puzzles. I do, you know, I was just talking to everyone doing every puzzle, because I was up for it. But then after like the 20th, I just couldn't be fucked anymore, you know? The story is quite interesting, is, while there seems to be one point which is glaringly obvious from the very start, it turns out that maybe it's not what we always thought, and it's a little bit different. And the way it ends up going is actually quite interesting, you know? I mean, like, there's all magic and stuff. Or is there? But no, seriously. It's a pretty, like, decent story, in that for the last segment, I was properly gripped by the story, which was all transpiring in the court case. Is, you know, if we deal with the Speller's backstory and see that is she or is she not the great witch Vizella who has been terrorising the town for many years, left and is going to be set aflame by the courtroom of ancient medieval times. But yeah, if you like Professor Layton and have always wanted to try Phoenix Wright, then go ahead, check it out. It's a lot of fun. If you like Phoenix Wright and have never wanted to try Professor Layton, or have wanted to try Professor Layton, it doesn't really matter. Court cases are the majority of the game, to be honest. Like, a massive chunk is courtroom cases, about half, which is a lot of the game, because it was about 30 hours in total. And the non-courtroom cases act a lot like just normal Phoenix Wright collecting evidence, investigating a crime scene, just with more arbitrary puzzles, which can take a bit of time. But, you know, check it out. It's fun! Well, hey there, and thank you for watching my video. If you liked it, make sure to let me know by leaving a comment, liking the video, or if you're crazy, you might even want to subscribe to my channel for more content that I might actually make at some point. On the screen there's also 2 other videos I made about Persona Q, which is a fun 3DS game, and my thoughts on the Wii U in general, as well as some crazy theories about why it's just not doing so well. Anyway, if you didn't like my video or anything at all, just, you know, why not tell me down below as well, because that's what comment sections are for, is leaving feedback. Thank you and goodbye. I've played a